Calamity has easily gained traction with the Terraria community as one of the most popular mods available. The Content Edition is massive and spread throughout the game, with new mechanics, structures, and twice as many bosses as the base game. It's not perfect, but its impact can't be ignored. Now, there are two categories of Calamity people, as implied by APSTP.
You either love it or hate it. Also, worms.
If you're one of those who loves it, you might decide to look into the tons of other add-ons available for the mod, and if you do, it's only a matter of time before you reach Calamity Community Remix. I know this mod has a tendency to get on people's nerves, and while I didn't play through the mod entirely, opting to do only the boss fights, there were so many concepts of this I enjoyed. It's a mod that's very well made, but that creativity is usually put towards screwing over a player's run, for the funnies. Creators are good at breaking the bounds of the game, but in the case of Calamity Community Remix, it resides as a joke that either irritates the player or gets them to belt out a real jovial I think it's got a lot going for it, so even if the mod tries its absolute hardest to get under my skin, I can't deny there are a handful of concepts I'd love to see in future Terraria mods, which is especially jarring for a mod that had developers with wild abilities who use said abilities to first and foremost spam walls of text. So, let's talk about Calamity Community Remix, the YouTube poop concealing a potential masterpiece. For those of you that don't want to destroy your mind with all the crap this throws at you, this is Calamity Community Remix for those who've never played it.
What a calamity!
Also, quick thing, please like and subscribe. I'm not even sure what this thing is, I just saw it in a Markiplier video and YouTube told me to post it here. Okay, so for those who you don't know about this mod, it's basically a mod that contains a ton of the content from the rated Calamity Wiki. It also contains other content, mostly used to get on the player's nerves. I figured this mod was obscure, but I also wondered what others thought of the mod. I mean, my comments didn't help much. People that hated the mod only had one thing to say: I hate the mod. I took to the first Reddit post I could find, and it was someone asking if they should get CCR for their Calamity run. Short answer, no, unless it's a focus. This isn't a mod you pick up just because you're bored and need a new Terraria playthrough to spice up a couple elements. This is the kind of mod that streamers play just because it makes everything ridiculous.
That I'm dodging here.
It's hilarious when you're watching someone else's pain, but it gets on your nerves incredibly easily. So, it's based on a fandom wiki where people put whatever the heck they want down, so it's probably poorly designed for a mod, right? Not even close. The last thing that should come to mind with this mod is poorly designed. The boss fights are what I usually focus on, and sure, they're not exactly the cream of the crop, but if you stop and look at everything else, you notice things that absolutely did not need to be there, just being there. This is probably my favorite little detail of the entire mod. It reminds me of SGA from 1.3. It wasn't necessary, and it must have been a pain to implement, but it's so good. Also, the way the helpers function is unique, and it flows pretty well when it's not trying to be annoying. The star of the show here is Fanny, who you either love or hate. I genuinely doubt there's any in between. Actually, let me know if you like him. If you hate him, I understand entirely, but I can't be the only guy that likes him, right? I'll get to the toggles later, but this one post stated that Fanny was also toggleable. I don't know how to do this, but apparently just about everything that's hated in the mod can be turned off. That said, I'm not sure how I feel about that. If you turn this all off, I'm not sure what you're left with. A handful of decent at worst bosses. Also, there are original songs. The title screen theme is copyrighted, well, one of them is. But nearly every other boss has its own theme, which, when the other mods make dodging copyright a nightmare, it's good to have some fallback, and again, it wasn't necessary. Plenty of mods throw whatever song they want in there, so I appreciate the creativity. Also, it's got compatibility with Wrath of the Gods and Infernum. Little unnecessary detail that the devs included, but welcome all the same. Oh, but keep in mind multiplayer doesn't work, or if it does, it's not a priority for the devs. So, that's what this mod is. Let's look at what it includes. These characters sit on the side of your hub and give you information. Most of it means nothing. Let's start with Fanny, because he makes his presence known the moment you spawn in a world. He's supposed to be your guide in this fantastic, wonderful world, and he's obviously trying his absolute hardest to help you. That said, he gets mixed results, though this is all supposed to be a joke, which, credit where it's due, I found him pretty funny and charming sometimes. One of the biggest differing factors in his helpfulness is based on what mod it's a part of. For example, if it's common knowledge in Terraria or original Calamity, it's probably a lie. Like this, where he recommends you escape the scary wall of flesh with a magic mirror. Or here, where after you beat Skeletron, he says you should check the ocean past the jungle to find treasures. The ocean past the jungle is always a normal one, there are no treasures of the abyss over there. But say instead you get a Bloody Vein. This item is used for at least 3 of Calamity Community Remix's puzzles, and in the normal run you'd probably trash it. Why wouldn't you? It's a pet item of the Perforators, so unless you equip it and like it, there's no reason to keep it. The first time you get one, Fanny will tell you to hold on to it. He doesn't tell you what it's used for, but he does tell you that inserting it in random items and objects has a chance to do some wild things. Also, when Golem's defeated, he'll alert you to a part of the jungle getting plagued. He'll tell you about the modified massive astral infection beneath its origins, and he'll even tell you how to beat Oxygen, as it's a much different boss fight from most, but I'll get to that later. Now, he can also troll the player, though it's usually very niche and not likely to screw over your run. Okay, early on it's not. For example, he's apparently the one responsible for giving you a second jump. Normal Calamity comes with a dash that goes about 1 block, and it's just enough to instantly hit top speed without being a dash. Fanny saw this and decided to help in his own way, so he gives you a second jump that comes before all the others, can't be disabled normally, and only goes about as high as 2 blocks. And that's the generous estimate. Also, he'll normally tell you to keep your health above 0 to stay alive. Rarely, and it might just be post Moonlord, he'll even help you heal. That's right, follow his dialogue through when you're low on health, and he uses a lesser healing potion on you. And yes, it inflicts potion sickness as well. That's the brunt of what helpers are here, but there are a couple of others that can be summarized much faster, and none of them want to help you. Well, except maybe Evil Fanny. Oh, yeah, the next partner you logically can't miss is Evil Fanny, who shows up when the Wall of Flesh is defeated. She's the edgy Shadow the Hedgehog to Fanny's Sonic, and she sometimes helps, actually. No, here's the thing. It's usually just backseat criticism or simple acknowledgement of something. However, she confirms that Fanny's remarks about oxygen are true. She also confirms that the essence of Babil is dropped from jungle creatures in hard mode. That said, this line of dialogue you follow here gets you killed, which, to be fair, I'd probably smite myself with 6 incredibly powerful debuffs if I was this dense. Otherwise, she's just there, unless you do something to make her angry. If you play Summoner, she might come up and call you a no-life who doesn't enjoy having fun in video games because you decided to play the worst class in the game. Okay. I understand I'm playing for the underdogs here, but I like Summoner and believe it's the most high-risk, high-reward class in the game. It can do a ton of damage with the right build, and the drawback is low defense, and you can do even more with whips, which is why most mods either don't acknowledge their existence or nerf them into the dirt. It encourages close combat and dodging, which is why I like it for mods specifically that follow certain bullet hell patterns. Also, this dialogue box doesn't close until you switch classes. It's not constant, fortunately, but still. She and Fanny have exclusive dialogue to the Nameless Deity fight as well, and Evil Fanny laughs maniacally when Rod of Harmony is destroyed. That part's pretty funny, actually. She also gets irrationally angry during the fight against Nameless Deity, calling out Karma for her horrible design choices. Ouch. It's mostly because of overuse of shaders, but still. Say what you want about the Nameless Deity, but if you removed all the flashy effects and the shaders, you'd still have a fight that violates your hub, breaks the 4th wall, requires constant positioning to be defeated, and some incredibly creative attacks otherwise. I get it. For the people that didn't like Nameless Deity for overusing the shaders, this criticism makes sense, and I can't blame you. I think it's cool, but we all have our preferences. For a bit of a tangent, I'd like to point out this post I saw once. The gist of it is, your first everything is going to be bad, but you can't make your 100th without making your first. I think that the Nameless Deity, while flawed, was a fantastic step for Karma. She got to use plenty of effects, mess around with other types of attacks, and it all led to what I believe to be the greatest Terraria boss I ever fought, the Avatar of Emptiness. I fought, at the time of writing, 449 unique modded bosses, and I stand by the ranking for Avatar. As much as some of these other bosses are some of my favorites, I still believe Avatar of Emptiness to be the best, with attack variety, creative use of other dimensions, background to foreground attacks, clever use of abilities that require a bit of work, memory, and reaction time to dodge. I'm not averse to criticism, but Evil Fanny tends to get pretty aggressive with it. Also, I'm not one to harp on profanity. If you use it, okay, and I prefer to reserve it for being dead serious, but Evil Fanny uses it pretty consistently compared to, heck, other Terraria mods with darker undertones. It all enhances the character as an edgy teenager who's experiencing a mood swing and just wants to express how much she hates... Oh. Next is Miracle Boy, who appears once the Moonlord is defeated, and his criticism is worse than Evil Fanny's. He'll roast you for taking damage, for using healing potions, for existing. Those are all factors that make the core concept that 99% of the Terraria fanbase utilizes. Sure, my run Cataclysmic, I'm nothing to worry about, but everyone else has to deal with this crappy cheerleader every time they take damage. Meanwhile, Miracle Boy, you're invincible, attached to a screen, and you look like a scrapped Cuphead boss. Go screw yourself and try not to enjoy it. Yes, Miracle Boy made it to the top of my least favorite helper list in record time, and it's not remotely close. Helpers in other games aren't this awful either. You may think, well, what about Evil Fanny? Doesn't she get on your nerves? You hated her Summoner slander? Sure, but Evil Fanny at least has a plausible reason to be annoyed half the time. The other half, she's slandering very specific elements, and they're usually controversial enough to have their fair share of haters, so to an extent, they make sense. Miracle Boy isn't helpful at all, hasn't offered any advice, doesn't advance the story in any reasonable way, and if you decide, well, I'll just not get hit, 1, I admire your self-confidence, but 2, that won't stop him from showing up and mucking around. He and Fanny have a full-blown conversation during the Exomex fight, and he won't stop harping on the poor little guy. If Fanny gets on your nerves, I understand entirely, but I can see no reason why someone would ever like or even tolerate a character like this, which effectively means that Miracle Boy accomplished the mission he set out for, be as annoying as humanly possible. I haven't even gotten to the various ways this game trolls you. Pathetic double jump, restricted accessories, random lag all for a bit, and unremovable walls of text that serve no purpose other than obscuring the screen, and this is the thing that aggravates me the most about the mod for no good reason. I haven't even seen him all that much, and I can't stand him. The only reason I didn't have to deal with this scrapped with my showcase video was because I didn't defeat the Moon Lord. I gave myself appropriate gear and attempted Pyrogen, as well as the bosses right afterwards. Then dodge a bullet here. I touched a friggin' tactical nuke. His dialogue doesn't even disappear on its own. I don't know how to get rid of it. One of the many things this mod does, Miracle Boy is the only concept I'd toss into a trash bin without a second thought. He's the only thing that consistently got on my nerves in this mod. Okay. Okay, I've calmed down a bit now. I don't know how to trigger this, but apparently at some point in the mod, he gets disemboweled and his dead body rots away on the screen. Scary thing is, I felt nothing after looking at this picture. The best way I can describe my emotions after seeing this was...
Oh no! Anyway, last week...
The remaining helpers are basically one-offs that don't offer much. Next is, well, okay, this abomination is someone who constantly plays Subway Surfers and showers you with brain rot terms whenever he feels like it. His name is Crimson, and he's apparently the son of the Crime Mother, the unreleased boss of Terraria Otherworld. He's meaningless. He shows up the first time you get a cell phone or similar item. Next is Trapper Bulb-chan, who shows up at the top of the screen after Plantera is defeated. She doesn't offer much other than words of encouragement and random ponderings, and doesn't affect the story very much. Every response the player has to her defaults to the Japanese phrase that translates to, amazing, thank you very much. Next is Flux. If she looks familiar, that's because she's based on a Starfarer from Stars Above, but she's got some key differences. She's got a generic good guy persona and doesn't have much in terms of personality, but that doesn't stop her from ruining your run. Let's get to it. She's different from the actual Starfarers in these key ways. 1. She shows up misplaced on the left side of the screen, unlike the Starfarers that default to directly below the player. 2. You can't talk to her whenever you feel like it, she shows up randomly. 3. She only shows up randomly for boss fights, and you can't find her anywhere else. 4. When she shows up, her dialogue is far more likely to show up for the smallest things, so every time you close the box, you've got 3 seconds at most before she says something else. For reference, the actual Starfarers, Stellar Novas aside, only showed up once during a boss fight, if at all, to point out that you got hit with a debuff or landed a critical hit, not counting dialogue that shows up the first time you attempt a boss. 5. Her dialogue doesn't close on its own. You need to do so manually. 6. She doesn't have access to essences or stellar novas, so she provides nothing but generic commentary. Just like AFK Pet's security bot, if she shows up for a fight, you're playing the game with pop-ups until either you or the boss dies. The worst part about this is that if your cursor goes over it, you stop firing. You need to get rid of it, but it just keeps coming back. Keep in mind, she was here for 3 or 4 boss fights, and I still didn't hate her as much as this prick. She was supposed to get on my nerves, and she didn't for some reason. If I looked like I was flailing around her in the Polyphemalist boss fight, that's because this was the first time Flux showed up, and I was still trying to figure out everything about her. Okay, last but not least, we have the Talking Flower from Super Mario Wonder. It says something the first time you equip Wings, and the first time you equip Tracers, and that's it. There are 2 others I couldn't find, but the wiki describes them both as being deceased. I'd understand not finding this caricature of Celine because I didn't have Wrath of the Gods installed, but this card didn't show up for me either. I got off on a tangent here, but the point I'm trying to make is that were not all of these purely jokes, you'd have a pretty interesting cast of main characters. They could bring the world to life by talking about the things they're experts on, and they may even have abilities or keys that make befriending them on your journey all worth it in the end. Here, you want to go out of your way just to avoid just about all of these. Finney's exceptions notwithstanding, which you don't even need to read in the first place. Next are the bosses. Compared to the bosses I've fought before, they're decent at worst. I don't find any of them terrible. My biggest complaint would be the lack of phases, or sometimes the phases just take too long and have too few attacks in the process. It's the concepts behind the fights that I want to talk about, which I'll do when I come across them, so let's just go down the line. First, the Calamity. This boss is based on the trend of tossing whatever into Terraria, giving it lasers with no animation, and sticking it at the beginning of the game. It's satirical. It won't even let you take more than 2 hits, and in previous versions, that count was 1. You would fail the fight in 1 shot. However, I like the boss. The simplistic jumps through the lasers as they show up as fun, and even if the concept isn't all that original, it sets up the fact that you're in for a joke. Also, my phase complaint doesn't apply here. The boss is on a timer, and just when you get used to each phase, it throws something else in, and once the timer hits 0, you strike it down, win the fight, and get the option to send a Calamitous certificate to your own computer desktop. I think the song is also satirical because it's a heavy rock track that plays in a match where carefully slipping through slow projectiles is key, but I like the track. Oh, and when I said you can only take 2 hits, I didn't say it'd kill you. In previous versions, and I can only assume it still applies, the Calamity inflicts a debuff that made it think you were dead, and it'd run off. Next is Wolfram Excavator, and it will play the part of the mandatorily included worm boss. Despite that, this one is original. Flies through the air, takes aim, fires projectiles, charges at you, repeats the process. The way it drops the roll from drones is also reminiscent of the original Terraria bosses that summon their own minions during the fight. As its health depletes, it introduces new attacks, such as flying to the corner to launch lasers, or circling the player to launch lasers. Also, it's summoned by sticking an energy core into a living wood chest. Why those ones specifically is beyond me, but it adds a little extra step before you fight the boss. Again, the song is fantastic, and I love the Draydon motif added in there as well. This mod reuses Cryogen-based boss fights, and Origin is the first of these. The fight is basically a pre-hard mode Cryogen, and it even uses a remix of Cryogen's theme. It's fine, it works. But before the fight starts, Fanny points out that when it spawns, you're being punished for home invasion, which, fair. Not sure why Origin decided to settle down here of all places, but who am I to judge?
Excuse me, what the actual f*** are you doing on my—
Also, when the fight ends, you unlock extra slots in your accessories. There are 10 souls you can get, including Cryogens. Souls can be equipped here, and they have strengths and drawbacks. Origins is pretty standard, it increases your defense, but this slot did actually come in handy for me down the line, even if the sound mixing on my computer would never forgive me. Acid Cider is pretty standard, a corrosive I have to fall to, spits out projectiles and minions, and the former rain down from the sky at certain phases. I think the fight needs to reach the second phase a little more quickly, but it's a solid fight otherwise that makes use of the early pre-hard mode Sulphurous Sea. The theme also employs a Sulphurous Sea motif, which is a great attention to detail. Carcinogen is probably the most forgetful for me. The fight wasn't that fun for me, and the impeded vision screwed me over, and this was all the pattern was. There's not a lot of arena space either, which might have just been me being lazy, but the tight spacing combined with the random projectiles as Carcinogen hovers close to you isn't fun to deal with. That said, I do like the song, and it gives the levity that makes the player wonder what they're doing fighting a giant cigarette elemental. Also, it's spawned by destroying background walls and asbestos caves, and Fanny even clues you in on this the first time you enter one. Ionogen is also forgettable for me, but I think that's just because I couldn't summon it properly. There's supposed to be an NPC at the Sulphurous Sea that you can complete quests for, but I never found it. I searched everywhere and created a couple new worlds as well. During my showcase, I fought it on grass, which was lazy of me because I knew you summoned it at the Sulphurous Sea. The fight's pretty cool otherwise, with magnetic attractions pulling the player in and various lightning and sulfur projectiles forcing careful movement. I messed up with the song on my original showcase video, accidentally using Acid Cider's theme again, which worked pretty well actually, but to rectify that, here's a snippet of the actual theme. Now, this is what I consider the pinnacle fight of the mod, Polyphemus. This boss has a combination of 4 eyes, all with different names and projectiles. We've got, Cataraticome, Conjunctivirus, a Sigmageddon, and Exotrexia. While not going into what all of these mean, they're similar to the twins in vanilla Terraria, all having meaningful names meshed with various eye diseases. So, first of all, just look at the way they rotate like a turret picking out the proper weapon, and the one firing Cursed Inferno even fires the attack to spread the flames as it rotates. The dash is hard to avoid, but otherwise there's a ton of cool details and polish in the first phase. When the second phase starts, the eyes split and stop working together. No, wait, 3 of them spread projectiles and make a makeshift arena, while the 4th goes 1-to-1 with the player for a while. I love this tag team mechanic, and it's why I enjoy the XOMX fight. And it's still balanced, just in case you thought the eyes moved too fast. The ones that finish their onslaught on the player pause in exhaustion when they're done, then pick up shortly afterwards. Also, DM Dikuro's Cave Story song works very well here. Oxygen probably has my favorite mechanic, and I'd love to see it fleshed out later on down the line. The fight starts out in space, but Oxygen's shield is too strong. In fact, it scatters debris when taking damage while impervious. Fanny tells you to lure it into the abyss so the aquatic pressure can destroy its shield, and Evil Fanny confirms this. Oxygen fires clouds, satellites, and other low-orbit debris at the player as they guide it downwards, and at about the third layer of the abyss, Oxygen lays out mines for the player to go through. Also, the player needs to guide through the worst parts of the abyss, including the endothermic geysers, while keeping Oxygen close, otherwise it will despawn, as well as Oxygen taking damage and showing visible cracks as it becomes more vulnerable. Once you reach the bottom of the abyss, the real fight starts. The fight doesn't change much from there, as Oxygen reuses the attacks it used during the chase, but dang, I wish there were more bosses like this. Run away, and once the real weakness is revealed, last stand. The music here is bright and cheery, which works on the surface, but seems more out of place the lower in the abyss you go. That said, I added the song after the fact, so if it gets darker or changes the lower the player goes, I mess that up as well. Phytogen is a giant pineapple that makes use of the nuke like jungle. If the enemies pile up around you, Phytogen spawns in, uses hooks and vines as well as a fruit salad of projectiles to attack the player. Also, you attack the vines first, and the thing makes its last stand by sitting in place, surrounding the player and itself in an arena of fruit and launching attacks. That's all I have to say about it, though I appreciate the biome coming with the boss. Also, the theme, while I only gave it a casual listen and didn't pick up on any motifs, is pretty beautiful. Hydrogen is awoken in the sunken sea with explosives and destroys the surrounding world with similar weapons. Heck, when it dies, it nukes the entire sunken sea. Some sanctuary. Sure, in games like Terraria, where you can never truly complete the game, this kind of thing is looked down upon, but it didn't faze me much. I knew this was a possibility, and I didn't set up any NPC homes or anything like that. If you set up homes down here hoping to utilize the sunken sea pylon and this took you by surprise, I am so sorry. Other than that, I like the warning sirens and the various forms of explosives it takes advantage of during the fight, such as missiles and underwater mines. Pathogen. Okay. You use the Bloody Vein on a sink to invite parasites and viruses to attack you. That said, the world's natural immune system, I guess, doesn't like that very much. You start an invasion where you pick a side, kill enough of one side, and you take part against the other. The side you join ignores you. Join the defenders, and you fight Pathogen as a boss. Join the invaders, and you fight alongside Pathogen to destroy the immune system. Admittedly, nothing happens regardless of what side you take, but it's a fantastic good versus evil event, and regardless of what path you take, Pathogen drops its rewards once the event ends. These concepts are fantastic. Lostport and Mod of Redemption use alignment mechanics to determine if the player is good or evil, and they're based on isolated events. I love the good versus evil mechanic, and imagine an edition where instead of choosing to fight or spare or finish off one boss, imagine if two armies marched over into your house and you had to pick a side to advance one of two stories. This kind of event has loads of potential, and I genuinely love it. Oh, yeah. Pyrogen is the flame form of Cryogen, and it's rather popular even outside the Calamity community remix. It's even a joke boss in Calamity's Legendary Seed in the base game. Here, though, Pyrogen's potential is realized even more. Its shield is made of molten weapons, and it can hookshot the player to keep them close for a barrage of attacks. I like the concept of bosses using grappling hooks on the player, and it works well here. It inflicts a powerful fire debuff on hit, so no tanking. It also draws in debris, as well as the player, while charging up the Obsidian Bomb. Also, the theme is slow, aggressive, and powerful, mostly like Pyrogen itself. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention this part. So every gen boss minus Origin drops an Archmage-like NPC on death. You'll have a ton of extra NPCs in no time, such as a mage smoking a blunt, a mage in space gear, a mage with singed hair, a mage in silver armor. Okay, pretty cool, actually. And even a mage from Hydrogen, which I don't know how that happens, given Hydrogen just nuked what was once a beautiful sanctuary, and certainly no living thing could have survived the blast. Maybe he had a nebulous core. Anyway, not the point. My point was that most of these were jokes, but Pyrogen actually drops a familiar NPC, Calamitous. I don't think you can access her power yet, and even if you could, I don't think you could upgrade any weapons, so she's nerfed accordingly, but I thought I'd mention that part. Hypnos is a boss fight I both love and hate so much simultaneously. Draydon's quotes for this fight are spot on. Typically, add-ons tend to miss the mark when adding dialogue for pre-existing characters, but these fit Draydon so well. Also, the neurons going out of control when detached makes sense. This attack is cool, even if dodging it is nightmare and a half. That's one of the things I don't like about the fight. Feels like it locks onto my position way too easily, the detached neurons no longer have their tells, and this attack, I'm still not sure I entirely know how to dodge it. That said, the lore behind Hypnos being a scrap machine from Draydon's earlier days, which uses organic brain power that Draydon gave it to repair itself and grow stronger, is fantastic. It also has its own theme, which is great, and includes that Draydon motif that every Calamity mech should have. Okay, so just hear me out. Noxus was neutered a bit here. First of all, it's not invincible when swapping phases, it has much less health, at least I killed it way too quickly, and there's nothing additional to the fight, which ordinarily is great to keep it close to the original, but other parts of him are nerfed, so it just doesn't land like it used to. Of course, that also might just be nostalgia talking. One thing I had to get used to was this tell here being backwards, and you might have noticed it too, if you were one of the 9 or so viewers that watched my first take on Wrath of the Gods. Also, the song here finishes off the adventure with a ton of memes and jokes.
What a calamity!
But I can also picture this part near the end of the fight, making me wish I'd given it a proper listen to before making my showcase. So, escort mission, home invasion, tether, nearby destruction of an underground biome, pick a side invasions. Great concepts. I want to see more of them. Not including New Game the Sun Can See. I'd rather not have an entire biome be destroyed for defeating a boss, unless you're told ahead of time that for story purposes the biome will no longer be accessible. I give it a pass here because I knew it was a meme and a joke. I wasn't mad because I understood this kind of thing wasn't outside the realm of possibility. I just think it's interesting that a meme mod was the first I could find to attempt some of these concepts. Okay, so next includes everything else. Remember the wimpy double jump I mentioned earlier? It's a toggle. Now before you dig through the mod configurations to try to turn it off, I introduce Anomaly 109. This item is a set of codes that lets you toggle certain concepts on or off. To save you time, place this down and type space. Lets you turn off the double jump. In order to figure out how these codes work, you have a help feature, which is locked. You unlock it by answering the question. I'm not sure if it's different each time, but mine asks for the proper wiki for Calamity, which is wiki.gg. Once you type that in, clicking on help will send you to a hidden page on the Calamity wiki that gives you all the codes and what they do. Some of Calamity Remix's changes are locked behind these codes, so there are different ways to craft permanent upgrades, or find better materials, or even get better materials earlier at reduced stability. It even allows you to create new biomes specifically for Remix, but I'll get to that later. Now, let's get back to talking about links.
Nobody was talking about that.
Which is why I'm trying to get that ball rolling.
One time I clicked on one of Crimson's quotes and it sent me to a YouTube video. Found out later that it was this quote here, which led me to a video called More Blood Please by the YouTuber that goes by Some Hive Mind Thing from 7 years ago. I didn't watch it at the time, but it really made me more cautious of blowing through quotes with reckless speed. This specifically stopped me here, where Fanny asked me for my credit card information so he could eat something. Now, I'm not about to say that this is a trick to scam the player and steal their cash, but I also really didn't want to say yes to Fanny's request. I left it alone for a while, and it closed on its own. I assume that a different conversation started, but it's also possible that some of this dialogue closes on its own if you leave it for long enough. I can't say this for certain because the wiki says otherwise, but still. Also, if you momentarily suspend the game while Discord's active, he may comment on what you and your friend are talking about. Yes, this is Skull the Animator, my brother. The first time I saw this, I was terrified, especially since he called him Skull rather than Skull the Animator, which is his Discord name. Found out later he was using Skull's old Discord name, which didn't feature the preceding title. It's a joke, but dang, I love this detail. Here's the thing, games have done this before, yet it's appalling and surprising to the player every time. One shot, reads the player's name before the game's barely fired up, and you need to solve puzzles both in and out of the game to proceed. Undertale recognizes when you undo your progress after killing someone, with Flowey berating you for doing so. DDLC. Okay, that's kind of all over the place, but I think you get the idea. Even the SGA mod in Terraria 1.3 did this. The final boss literally sends you a document and tells you how to fight her at her full potential, and assuming the default setting is on, she reads your computer username instead of your character name. It's a small detail, but it terrified me at the time. This is the second Terraria mod that's done this, and since the first was from over 4 years ago, this little detail stuck with me. It was cool. I loved it. I didn't see it coming. Oh, and some accessories were reworked here as well. But before I get too far from this, I'd like to introduce the new Expert Mode accessory drops. See these sick kicks and fake J's? Every Expert Mode accessory is replaced by these. Are they functionally different? No, the Shield of Cthulhu still lets you dash, the Brain Confusion still dodges attacks, and any of them that become merged into a single accessory will turn into that accessory. That said, the Demon Heart gives you an extra slot, but it's reserved for a second pair of shoes only. You can equip shoes anywhere, but you have an extra designated slot where only shoes can go. This mod also features new biomes with interesting mechanics, such as the Barren Strait. It spawns on the normal ocean side and completely removes the ocean. Don't fire up a new world to check for yourself, because you won't see it. You need to generate it yourself. How do you do that? Well, it's called the Barren Strait, and the term seems to be used for fishrons, so what if we defeat the old Duke? Nah, the old Duke was removed from this mod, as was Cirrus. Yeah, that's right, this mod removed Cirrus before the Predator was even caught. Anyway, maybe defeat Duke Fishron? Nope. You need to get this fish to dash past the world border. Yeah, that's it. How would you ever know to do that without a guide? I generated this thing myself, and spawning Duke Fishron didn't get Fanny to say anything. It's possible he gives a passing quote when searching for or obtaining truffle worms, but I wouldn't count on it. Also, this biome, similarly to the Sunken Sea after the hydrogen fight, completely destroys the only ocean in this Terraria world. Dang, I thought I hated water levels. As for the Barren Strait, it's just there. There's no reason you should generate this thing. No recipe or item for crafting, and just some special pink glass that can be placed. And I hope you stay on top of your game if you don't want your ocean to be irreversibly destroyed. Other biomes exist as well, and don't destroy half the world in the process. The Plague Jungle is pretty cool, and an extra part of the Astral Infection is welcome, as the biome feels obsolete half the time. So, for my final thoughts, I feel the need to point out that I messed around with the mod a lot, but I never attempted an actual playthrough of it. Most of what I showed you here was just me turning on God mode and quote-unquote speedrunning the game. I wish I was joking, but that's potentially the only reason I have anything good to say about this mod. I guess what I'm trying to say in this video is that I like the mod, but I'd like it even more if it wasn't built just to be a meme. This mod can be creative, when it feels like it. The mod can be helpful, when it feels like it. This mod has its unique characters, but most of them don't have any relevance. I'd love to see a ton of these concepts in future Terraria mods, but maybe not when the game is hounding you with removable dialogue boxes and helpful mechanics that screw pacing. Don't get me wrong, I had this understanding it was just a big meme. I enjoyed Fanny. Flesh Mullet here was a twist. Getting punished for home invasion is a funny concept. Fanny's ordeal of reading the wrong wiki while trying to help you defeat the Devourer of Gods is fantastic, though I also say this as someone who didn't fight the dog legitimately while he was rambling. Hydrogen nuking the Sunken Sea caught me off guard. Oxygen's boss fight was a new, unique chase at the start, even when the patterns got repetitive. Keep in mind that CCR doesn't restrict itself to any of the concepts put forward by the fandom wiki. Pyrogen is post-Moonlord here, when it's fought early hard mode according to the fandom. Oxygen's wiki page on the fandom is nothing like the fight in CCR. The gen bosses in general are spread throughout the difficulty instead of being clumped at the beginning of hard mode. The Calamity is wildly different on the fandom page in both sprite and skills. CCR doesn't even introduce half the bosses added by the fandom wiki, and I can only assume it's because there was a level of polish the devs wished to add to each encounter. I laughed at the memes, fell in love with the mechanics, and now just feel devoid of creativity that could see peak potential in the future. I hope to see more from other mods as well, as the community is always looking to get creative, for better or worse. For everything this mod does to make me hate it, there's another clever idea right around the corner, assuming I shake off the tactical nuke explosion and just keep looking. I guess to summarize, I want to like this mod, but the mod wants me to hate it. I feel the need to point out this video isn't a how to fix everything wrong with CCR. it's all a meme based on a rated wiki where people with tons of creativity and no chill introduce whatever concepts they want. The mod serves a purpose, so it was placed here for. Continue the running gag. There's not exactly a reason to make any of these changes based on what I say. Also, my opinion has less credence since I can barely sprite a model, let alone develop an entire mod with as much creativity and care. This next segment is basically me saying, this concept is fantastic. If it wasn't used for a meme or a joke mod, I'd like to see blank. So, here are my ideal changes, open to interpretation and some incredibly vague. For helpers, Fanny's fine enough for me, I don't have much to say. Evil Fanny. She doesn't exactly line up with her name, she's just an armchair quarterback. That said, since she does help the player, though it usually comes with some form of criticism, I'd like to see her help the player a bit more often, and maybe even get the player to warm up to her. That was my personal experience, at least. I hated her the first time I saw her, but now I don't care as much. For the opposite direction, you can give her an arc that makes her live up to the evil counterpart that she is, make her a bit more of a villain. Miracle Boy. I harped on him previously, but if some of his immovable dialogue was movable, he'd be better to deal with. Also, to tie in his abilities, he could give the player lore or tips on fighting bosses. If you want to get incredibly creative, the first Exomex could be invulnerable until Miracle Boy, who is made up of the same matter that fuels the Exomex, looks through his legends and history to find a way to disable them. For Copper Bulb-chan, give her a bit of an arc involving the play jungle, and even consider having dialogue when Drayden appears for the first time, where she's either incredibly sad or angry at his experiment destroying a large part of her home. Crimson, well, I could care less. Flex can have the occasional flash of genius moment for very specific fights. She's from the stars. Maybe she can tell the player that Oxygen's shield needs heavy pressure to destroy it. Oh, and I had this idea. So if I could make one addition to Calamity Community Remix, if I could request one thing, I'd love to see a point at the end of the game where every single helper is arguing with each other simultaneously. These three are at each other's throats half the time, but tack on Crimson, Trappercham, Flux, and even that pointless talking flower and let everyone go wild. I'd love to see that. For bosses, Calamity's fine. Wolfram Excavator, maybe a couple extra attacks. Origin, give it 2 phases while its shield is up, and that gives it phase 1, phase 2 at half health, and then phase 3 when its shield dies. Acid Cider, hit the second phase sooner. Carcinogen, maybe a second phase, but I admit I butchered my attempt by not including more room. Ionogen, second phase. Oxygen, extra attacks, and a new attack after each layer of the Abyss would be nice. Polyphemalus, perfect as is. If I could change something, I don't know what I'd change. Phytogen. Okay, so the fight wasn't my favorite, but it must have a pretty solid design if nothing really feels out of place for me. Hydrogen. The fight's rather short, so it's fine as is. Pathogen. It's got some creative attacks, and being an event boss, it's not the sturdiest with the most attacks, so once again, good as is. Pyrogen, great as is. Hypnos, make it a bit slower in terms of move speed and projectile spam. Noxus, buff the HP, I guess. Okay, full disclosure, Noxus's removal from Wrath of the Gods didn't hurt me that much. It was cool, but Avatar of Emptiness made more sense, especially with the lore put behind it that you see play out in the game. If you were one of Noxus's fans, however, what do you think of the fight? Do you think it needs any extra parts to it? For Miscellaneous, this category featured most things that were designed to troll the player, so of course any other mod wouldn't include it. These were fun the first time they happened, but I'm sure they'd get old for everyone else pretty quickly. So yeah, anything that trolls the player via the anomaly, remove it from the typical experience. Once again, this mod is good, especially for being designed around trolling the player, so I'm not saying this mod needs to be deleted and tried again for the best experience. This is what I'd like to see if the mod wasn't a troll. I'd reiterate, the developers have my respect for designing this experience, and I have no modding capabilities. I can understand why they include something just because they like the idea. This is my dream experience. If it wasn't a troll, and there's no reason to take this as criticism for the mod isn't perfect, but the jokes make the experience, and it's a great mod as is. Well, that's my 2 cents. If you have anything to mention, say, or point out, please do. I'm always willing to have a friendly conversation, assuming the other side is as well. That's to say, even if you disagree, please be respectful about it. I heart comments that I disagree with sometimes just because they lay out their case and opinion so well. It helps with productive conversation, even if the 2 sides don't agree with each other. But that aside, thanks for watching.